Hello, and welcome back to Wardrobes and Writing. I'm Dr. Jennifer Jones, expert writing coach. As promised last week, this week I'm back to talk about step 4 in the process of writing your expert book. This is all about the messy draft, or what you probably usually call the rough draft. I prefer calling it the messy draft because it reminds us that it's okay to make a mess. Your first draft only needs to make sense to you. It doesn't have to be clear enough to make sense to anybody else. So when I say messy draft, I do mean messy draft. Think of a child playing in the mud and how delighted they are to have it all over their face. Or maybe if you've ever seen a toddler eat spaghetti, they've got it everywhere, and they're quite happy to make that mess. That's how happy I want you to be to make the mess that you will make with your first draft. Before you start writing, you need to decide how you're going to approach this. This is the biggest chunk of work that you will do on preparing your book for publication. Writing the messy draft will take about 40 hours of writing. So, do you want to commit to finding 15 to 30 minutes a couple times a day, most days, for a month or two? Or do you want to completely clear the decks and focus on nothing but writing your draft for a week? There's not a right answer here. The right way to write your draft is the way that gets it done. I have written both ways. My first book, There's a Book in Every Expert That's You. That one assumes that you were starting from scratch and want to write your first book. I wrote that one in about 2 hours most days, not all at once, never all at once, over the course of a month. So roughly about 40 hours. I never wrote on weekends. I didn't write at night. I just fit the writing in around everything else. And that felt really good to me. It was comfortable to write that way. That is my preferred way of working. My most recent book, which is called Ready to Publish, and that's for authors who have a lot of stuff, like a YouTube channel or a lot of lives from their Facebook group or a course that they've run several times that they want to turn into a book. So that one assumes you're starting with a lot of stuff that you need to reshape into a book. When I wrote Ready to Publish, I was talking to some people who wanted to write their books, but they didn't like my little and often approach. And I said, well, okay, I don't coach people to do anything I haven't tried myself. So I had a go at writing in the sort of intense way these people were asking about. And I wrote the first half of the book, so about 20,000 words, in 3 days. Nothing remarkable about that. If you're writing a messy draft, you need to write it quickly, and you just dump the words on the page as quickly as you can. I ended up dictating quite a lot of it. Voice recognition software is great for your messy draft. And I got the 20,000 words out in 3 days. And then I wrote the rest of the book kind of at a similar rate, just not all the days together. I had some other stuff going on in my life at the time. So that can be done. I did not like writing that way again, and I will go to great lengths to avoid ever doing it again. I found that when I would get to the end of one of those intense writing days, I couldn't turn my brain off. So I was struggling to sleep or to even just sort of relax. But if that sort of hyper-focus works for you, it can be done, and you can choose to write your messy draft that way. So you need to look at how you've worked in the past, what's worked well for you, what didn't, not necessarily with writing projects, just how have you approached big projects in the past? And did you prefer the fitting it in where you can in your normal schedule? Or did you prefer just ignoring everything else and just focusing on that thing to get it done? That's going to tell you the best way to approach your draft. And since it's your draft, you get to do it your way. So once you decide how you're going to write, then your biggest hurdle is keeping your inner critic quiet while you write your messy draft. Your inner critic isn't there to get in the way or cause problems. She's just trying to keep you safe. She doesn't want you to write something and put it out to the world that if it's going to make you look stupid. So you need to try to get your inner critic to understand that this messy draft is for your eyes only. Because the only purpose of your messy draft, its only job, is to be done. That's it. It doesn't have to be clear. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be logically organized. It just needs to be finished. Once it's finished, then you can look at the structure and think about turning it into a book that's going to make sense and be useful for your readers. So you do need to write it as quickly as possible. That's only going to be possible if you get your inner critic to sort of go have a figurative cup of tea. I teach lots of ways to sort of quiet the critic when she's getting a little bit loud and in the way. The one that I keep going back to and that I think works best for most of my clients is changing what you're writing with. So move away from the computer for a little while and write with crayon on unlined, brightly colored paper. Your inner critic will not judge what you write in purple crayon on pink paper. She knows you're not going to publish that and send it out into the world. So if you get really stuck, do something like that. If you're only a little stuck, change up your writing situation. So pick up your laptop, move to another room, go write in a cafe for a little while. Call a friend who's got some sort of quiet work to do, whether it's writing or not. Have them sit with you and write. Co-writing is excellent. But find some of these ways to get your inner critic out of the way so that you can just get your messy draft out as quickly as possible. Because that is your only job for these 40 hours while you're writing your messy draft. Next week, I will be back to talk about revision, because you make the mess, you are going to have to tidy it up. The revision process doesn't take nearly as long, total of about 12 hours. So your time commitment does start shrinking radically after finishing this draft. But yeah, I'll see you next week to talk about revising your messy draft. Until then, happy writing.